cinematographer who spent years behind the lens capturing some of Namibia's most historic moments. During his time with the Algemeine Zeitung, Dirk had the rare privilege of photographing Namibia's founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma, countless times, preserving visual records of a leader whose legacy continues to shape the nation. As we reflect on Dr. Nujoma's life following his passing on February 8th, Dirk joins us in studio to share his experiences from behind the camera and what it was like documenting history in real time, the moments that stood out the most, and his personal encounters with the late president. Dirk, thank you so much for making time to join us.
It's a pleasure.
I think, perfect start to this conversation would be to get your impression of the passing of the late. Where were you when you got the news, and, how did you, process it?
I was actually at home, and somehow one was expecting it with the news we had, him being hospitalized and in his conditions in the month before. But as we humans are, we always push it away. You think things are forever, and once it happened, you are still shocked. And then you start thinking back, and what happened, and where did you meet the person, and what were the highlights, and there could even be some other situations. And I think this is an important thing we should do. We must remember things, while looking forward into the future, and knowing that some things will happen with all of us. We must remember what has happened, and we must try and evaluate it and think of the good things, the exciting things, even sometimes some bad things. But to remember is a very good thing, and to suddenly sit down and feel sorry won't help you, won't help history, and won't help you to come over the loss. But I think if you look back and you see all the nice things, the happy things, the positive things you actually had with that person, and what he did and what he didn't do. I mean, there's always two sides.
Yes.
This makes it easier and brings back a memory which you can share with others, which I eventually did.
Yeah.
Last
week I spoke to an older gentleman, an Afrikaner, Afrikaans-speaking gentleman, and I was always been very curious about finding out what the conversation was around, Sam Nujoma, before independence in the Afrikaner community. And luckily enough, he did meet him, and versus what they were told about, the liberation icon. They created almost they made him a boogeyman, so to say. And when he finally met Dr. Sam Nujoma and they sat and had a conversation, he had to go back and say, but this wasn't the case. I would like to find out, what was the conversation before independence in the German-speaking community around Dr. Sam Nujoma versus what you had about him, and when you finally got to meet him face to face?
Well, it's always like that. I mean, that you have got a different picture in your head when you hear something about a person or even just heard his voice. I mean, if a person phones you for the first time and you hear the voice, you've got a picture of that person, And if you may be being told that person will call you, you think, okay, I've got a little bit of information, but it's most of the time, let's call it one-sided information. We were here in the country, we German-speaking Namibians, and we couldn't get the chance. In my job, I think I did a lot of things different to a lot of my colleagues. I didn't want to be on this side, and I didn't want to be on this side. I saw myself standing behind the wall, looking over it, and recording what is there.
Yeah.
And I think I did a pretty good job, because if I see how people in SMAPO trusted and mistrusted me, and see how people on the other side with the police and the army trusted and mistrusted me, I think I did a good job. Because if only one side would have trusted me and the other side not, I think I wouldn't have been a neutral journalist or photographer, which I wanted to be.
Absolutely.
And then you heard certain things about the late president. And you had a picture in your head, but this was from one side. And I was pretty disappointed when, I can't remember what year it was, when a bunch of journalists and photographers from here went over to Zambia to meet him. And I was only able to photograph them in the plane, and then I had to move out and they flew off. But one picture which I still remember very well and which fascinated me was old Engelbrecht from the Republican. He sat next to Sam Nujoma and he pulled his beard. And that photograph was published. And I thought, gee, you know, when everybody talks about the terrorist and the man who just in a uniform and just shooting, and then he can joke around with Afrikaans speaking after you mentioned it. And this one, I was jealous that I didn't have taken that photograph. I must admit, I can't remember who took the photograph, but this is a picture which is still in my head. And then you start looking at things differently. But you still wondered how that person is like when you meet him for the first time.
Yeah.
And when I eventually met him, this is when he arrived here in the country. I was at the airport. I was just a few meters away from the steps where he came down. And you thought, okay, this is now the moment where you see him, where you're going to meet him.
Yeah.
But then immediately I had to switch onto one eye. Meaning I had to get up my camera and take photographs.
Yeah.
And in those days, I always had two cameras with me, one for taking black and white, and the other one was taking color slides. So I just concentrated on that. I wanted to get as many photographs as possible of that moment. And then you actually put that wall in between. This is where it comes when I say I had a wall over which I looked, or through which I looked. So you become professional and you put emotions and everything aside, which you have to, because otherwise you can't do a good job. And I think the photographs I got there, this is history now, and people are pretty excited to see what I've taken. Plus all the things which happened around, the hundreds of people which were outside the airport area and tried to get in and weren't allowed to. And late Hage, he still tried to get some people in, which had to be, and I still got photographs of that where he was standing with the then Southwest African police in that grey uniform they had in those days, trying to get things done, and they worked together, and everything around was actually pretty exciting. And then later, when we were in Windhoek and we were somewhere in Katutura, I only heard the other day now after somebody commented on one of my photographs that it was somewhere in Manahela. I sat like 2 meters from Sam Nujoma, and I had a chance to just leave the camera down and look at him.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we two actually had eye contact. And I could see there's this bit of mistrust, who is he? Who was these people here? And especially the people around him, the security guys, they didn't trust us at all. And that went on for quite a long time. But it was still exciting. It was something new. It was something which changed your view. It changed the way you started working. And then for many years, I photographed him and saw him. And eventually we respected each other. We greeted each other when he saw that. And even the last time when he was, I still remember it was at the old State House, when he said now goodbye then, because somebody else is going to take over the position. He said to me, we've never been photographed together. Give your camera to one of the guys and take a photograph. And I thought, wow. This is something exciting.
Yeah. Now you're a photographer at the height of the conflict as well in this country. How dangerous was it, or what did you have to do But what's that one thing? Let me put it this way: what's that one thing that you did that you look at? It's like, yo, I would have been dead by now had I had.
We actually never thought of that.
Yeah.
You know, you went into situations and well, you wanted to do a good job because you had a job to do and you wanted to get the best out of it. I never had the chance to go and meet the other side, which I would have done too, because as I said, I saw myself as a neutral person trying to get the news out, showing our readers what's it all about. You know, when the local stuff here, and just quickly coming back to your question, I can't remember one thing dangerous because you didn't think. Maybe if one really goes into a lot of situations now, people will say, gee, Heinrich, you've been hell of a stupid, or you were brave, or but we never, you don't think about these things.
Yeah.
And that's why I won't be able to answer the question. But if we take, for example, in Kalatura, when there were SWAPO meetings and things like that, because people were thinking about me, as I explained right in the beginning, you know, but there were people on that side who trusted me and others mistrusted me, you know. I was permanently in the tear gas. My standard equipment in my camera bag when I went to a meeting there was a lemon. Because when the tear gas came, you just took that lemon, you bit into it so it doesn't affect your throat and things like that. So I was, you know, part of the crowd and part of the people who suffered. But on the other side, then I could go after that to the other side and ask, okay, what was the purpose of that? And who was arrested and these type of things? And I got my information. And then you said, okay, you forgot about the tear gas and the lemon. Is unpleasant. It's not nice, especially if you're a photographer, or to try and take a photograph when your eyes are full of tears.
Yeah, true.
And not because you're crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of your job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Before we wrap up this conversation, I think, you know, you spoke about, you know, the mistrust, and for obvious reasons at that time, the climate that we're in as a country. But what was that defining moment when you won over the trust of, you know, of his security detail and also the man himself? What was that defining moment where you realized now that okay, I've, you know, overcome that obstacle now? I can do my job, knowing that I have been recognized as somebody who does it without fear or favor.
Well, it wasn't from the late president or founding fathers' side, because he didn't let me feel it. I mean, and I can't remember when it was the first time when he saw me again standing there behind my camera, and most probably only knew me with one eye for many years. But when he greeted for the first time, you know, and then later coming towards me. But also the guys around him, they eventually realized this guy is just doing his job, even if he's a bit pushy, and I was pushy, I must admit. Then they started trusting more people which were around. And suddenly they realized that not everybody around is a potential enemy, you know, especially from the media and things like that. We have to be there, and we are a bit pushy, and we don't like if a person stands in front of you. And it slowly but surely eased off. And then sometimes again, you had somebody, you know, try to push his weight and then pushed you back and things like that. But it was a process. But I think we could have overcome as a country this more if we would have started talking to each other a lot more. And we still don't talk to each other enough.
Dirk, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing those very personal details about, you know, encounters with the late founding president, and also, you know, how you saw him as a human being who wanted the best for everyone in this country. And also thank you for telling us, you know, stories through the lens. Highly appreciate it.
Just one last word, if I may.
Yes, sir.
One thing we Namibians must realize: once elections are over, it's not party anymore. You know, no matter for whom you voted, but it's your president. Sam Nujoma was my president, as was Pohamba and Geingob. I'm a Namibian, and if the majority decides he is the winner of the elections, then he is my president. If I voted for him or not, it doesn't matter, because then we're all Namibians again. And this is why we should stand together, play together. It's like a soccer team, you know. You can't say, okay, the captain of the team, no, I don't like him. I'm a fullback, but he's not my captain.
Yeah. Setting our differences aside.
We only got this country.
Absolutely. Dirk, thank you once again.
Pleasure.
All right, much appreciated. That was Dirk Heinrich, a veteran press photographer, sharing his memories and some anecdotes as well regarding the late founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma Nujoma. We'll be continuing with more conversations on reflecting the life and times of the late president. Stay tuned.